Hello everybody, good evening. Welcome to News Tonight. Tonight, government stands its grounds in the face of intensified pressure from Public Utilities Workers Union for an immediate suspension of any form of privatization of ECG and NEDCo.
Get jobs, preserve national sovereignty, and support Ghana's broader socio-economic development. TUC and all its affiliates will fiercely resist any attempt by government.
We'll hear from the Energy Ministry as the workers begin a series of industrial actions. Also tonight, lawyers for embattled former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta accused government of interfering in his battle to free himself from U.S. detention.
She has blood running through her veins. Ken Ofori-Atta has palm kernel oil, adrengo, in his veins. So he is now more important than Sedina Machunu, who has been convicted. This is the justice we are preaching in Ghana. Those double standards and hypocrisy and intellectual dishonesty will not aid Ghana.
Also ahead in this program, NDC and NPP brace for a Supreme Court verdict with huge consequences as the Apex Court sets January 28th for judgment on Kpandai election irregularity case. We'll tell you why the NDC is going ahead with campaigning the constituency ahead of the ruling in business.
Commercial banks challenge claims of not responding adequately to recent policy rate cuts and inflation rate decline.
In sports,
Ghana moves to strengthen oversight on doping among athletes with board unveiling of the anti-doping board. More details shortly.
And a bit later, justice delivery to grind to a halt in 5 days as Judicial Service staff declare indefinite strike over unpaid salary arrears. We got the latest of these and many other stories coming up in the next 60 minutes. My name is Kenneth Jesse. Be a part of this show by sending us a WhatsApp on 055 11 11 997. Details shortly. And this evening, government is standing its grounds in the face of intensified pressure from the Trades Union Congress and the Public Utility Regulatory Workers of Ghana for an immediate suspension of any form of private sector involvement in the operations of the Electricity Company of Ghana. At a press conference earlier on the proposed privatization organized by PUW in collaboration with the TUC, the General Secretary of the TUC, Joshua Ansah, said the sharp rise in revenue with ECG's average monthly revenue increasing from about 900 million Ghana cedis to approximately 1.7 billion Ghana cedis represents nearly a 90% increase within half a year. He added that the reduction in NEDCo's losses by about 8% is clear evidence that the utility can be turned around without private sector involvement, provided workers are fully supported and management is given clear and forcible deliverables.
Following extensive tripartite engagements involving the Public Utility Workers Union pool, representing staff of ECG, management of ECG, and the Minister of Energy and Green Transition, a 6-month turnaround program was agreed upon and implemented from July to December 2025. The result of the turnaround program has been phenomenal. Verified performance data from this turnaround program indicate that ECG's average monthly revenue collection increased from approximately 900 million Ghana cedis to a record of 1.75 billion. This represents more than 90% increase in revenue collection. This remarkable improvement in revenue collection has ensured that power generators are now paid regularly, avoiding insistence where independent power producers threaten or actually shut down their production plants in projects of unpaid arrears. This partly explains why the lights have been extraordinarily stable for the benefit of Ghanaians. Now, the turnaround program by NEDCo. The Northern Electricity Distribution Company, NEDCo, has faced significant challenges related to high distribution losses and inadequate revenue collection over the years. The northern area, particularly Tamale Township, records exceptionally high distribution losses averaging about 46%. In the last 1 year, this exceptionally high distribution losses have been slashed from 47.32% in November 2024 to 39% in November 2025.
And are calling for an immediate pause in all privatization-related processes. The Trades Union Congress, PUC, and the PUWU demands the extension of the current turnaround program with clearer deliverables for the management of ECG and NEDCo and also stronger oversight by state regulators.
The procurement of electricity generation capacity must be done through open competitive tender. Electricity generation must be procured in cedis and not dollars. F, the sanctions regime under the PURC Act needs to be reformed to make it possible for PURC to sanction individuals holding key positions in the energy sector for the dereliction of responsibility and or abuse of authority. We request the government to take proactive measures immediately to end all forms of political interference in the energy sector, including the management of ECG and NEDCo.
Thank you. Thank you.
In conclusion, comrades, ECG and NEDCo remain critical national strategic assets, essential to Ghana's economic development, energy security, national sovereignty, and social equity. While we acknowledge that challenges ranging from political interference to operational inefficiencies persist within ECG and NEDCo, private sector participation is neither a viable nor sustainable option. Ultimately, safeguarding ECG and NEDCo as public utilities guarantees affordable and equitable access to electricity, protects jobs, preserve national sovereignty, and support Ghana's broader socio-economic development. TUC and all its affiliates will fiercely resist any attempt by government.
All right, so that's the joint press conference by PUWU and TUC. Let's go onto the telephone lines right now and speak to Richmond Roxon. He's the spokesperson and head of communication at the Energy Ministry. Timothy Nyame is also the General Secretary of the Public Utilities Workers Union. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this evening. Richmond, let me begin with you. You've heard the calls and cries of organized labor. What do you have to say about this?
Let me say good evening to you, and then good evening to my very good friend, also from Pool. First, the government acknowledges the concerns raised by Pool, the Public Utilities Workers Union, and then the TUC as well, concerning the private sector participation in ECG. And what the government's position is at this point is that together with POO, they've always been in engagement. We've always exercised good faith as a government. And I'm sure that they will attest to the fact that only the Minister of Energy himself, Honorable Dr. John Jinapo, has been engaging them. And so throughout the process, ever since Cabinet approved PSP in April 2025, there has always been engagement. And it was through this engagement, one of such meetings, that they asked for 6 months for them to prove that they can improve the services of ECG, they can improve collection of ECG. And so let's get back to the table to engage. That is the best way to resolve whatever outstanding issues they have. We don't think that as a government, the best approach will be to have a banter with POO. The way forward is to come back to the table, as has always been the case. The same way that we ask for extension from the minister to prove themselves. If they have any concerns, let's use the same route and engage. And I'm sure that we're going to have better results than public banter.
So what becomes of the private-public partnership? Will it be on hold while you call POO and TUC to the negotiation table?
The reality is that this was approved by Cabinet, His Excellency the President John Dramani Mohammed's Cabinet, as far back as April 2025. In May, we engaged POO, we engaged them. In fact, last month we also engaged them as well. And so the engagement has always been consistent. What they want is that obviously they are looking out for their jobs. They don't think that it's ideal that the process should continue whilst government engages them. And at this point, what government has done is that it hasn't selected any concessionaire. There's a technical committee that was established by the Honorable Minister after the Cabinet approved PSP. And so the technical committee has been working around the clock, developed a draft framework agreement, has put together a report, has shared it with the Minister. That report will be reviewed by the Honorable Minister and government as a whole. I'm sure the Minister will go back to Cabinet and a number of decisions will be made. And so when they engage the Minister, I'm sure they will have a clear understanding of what's going on. And that is why I say that it is not the best to engage in public banter. What the government's interest is that we have a better ECG, we have a better energy sector, an efficient ECG, which at the core of this will be the protection of workers' interest. And so let's engage.
Right.
And then let's find a way forward to address all concerns they have.
Richard, don't go yet. Let me bring in Timothy Nyame. At this point, he's the General Secretary of the Public Utilities Workers Union. You've been listening to Richmond Roxon, who speaks for the Energy Ministry. He says that they're calling for further negotiations. Is this something that POO welcomes?
Thank you very much. And again, warm greetings to your listeners and warm greetings to Comrade Roxy. Yes, so in fact, what he's saying is not far from the truth at all. He knows that we have been holding engagement with the Minister, Honorable Minister, and in several presentations to the public. I have mentioned the enormous help assistance that we have had from the Ministry when it came to the turnaround strategies. We have given commendation to Honorable Minister, who actually did not ensure that there was no government interference in our 6-month turnaround program. Our main reason why we again have to come to the press was the a bit unilateral decision to announce the appointment of a transitional advisor whilst we were still in the process. But thank you, Comrade has said want to engage. Immediately after the press conference, we had a notice of a meeting with Honorable Minister and the Ministry. We are always actually open for negotiation and dialogue. And the position we put before government for the 6-month turnaround, he himself can attest to it, because on the day of presentation, he was at the meeting. And actually, he also commended the POO and management of ECG for the great turnaround. So for us to go and hear anything that we know is inimical to the workers of ECG and of Ghanaians, it takes them by surprise. So that's why you saw that we have to raise this issue to the attention of government and the public. So if you say there should be engagement, why not? We are ready to engage.
Right.
But all that we are saying that Ghanaians have the capacity, and I said it's not every industry that you can hand over to the private sector. Some sectors should be left for government alone. But when we get there, we'll hold a discussion, and then I know we'll back up. So I thank you very much, Roxy.
Right, Timothy, don't go yet. Let me bring in Richmond Roxon back at this point. Richmond, some of the fears of these workers are potential job losses, and of course, everything is on the table. The potential public-private, engagement is also on the table. How does the Energy Ministry intend to assure workers and the public that the private sector involvement will not lead to job losses or higher tariffs, should that even go ahead?
Number one, they've had the assurances of Honorable Minister that, like I mentioned earlier, at the heart of this process is the protection of interests of ECG workers. And they themselves will attest to it. The fact that the minister has always been transparent and straightforward with them. The minister has not been dilly-dallying. He's not been telling them lies. At all material times, he's been very truthful to them. And they have always commended the minister for the leadership he has shown when it comes to the process, the leadership he has shown when it comes to managing the ECG, the leadership he has shown when it comes to non-interference in any of the sectors or the agencies under the ministry, including the management of ECG, and how he has managed the sector as a whole. And so they trust the word of the minister. And that is why we are reiterating that once they have the assurances of the minister that there will be no job losses, at least so far how the minister has dealt with them will be a record for them to trust. The second point that I want to make is that for us as a government, the absolute interest is to have a better energy sector. We recognize that ECG has made progress. We recognize that the policies, reforms, the structural changes that the minister has put in place, which has been implemented by the management of ECG with the support of the workers, has led to some drastic improvement. But we are still not out of the woods. There's a significant gap that must be dealt with. There's serious concerns with billing and revenue. There's serious concerns with service. There's serious concerns with metering. And the workers know. And so let's continue to engage, as I mentioned. The minister's interest is not to sell ECG. Let me reiterate that ECG is not for sale. What the plan has always been is that you bring in the private sector to assist ECG to achieve its goal. ECG itself has private sector participation in there. There are certain aspects of their work that they fall on the private sector. And so it is not a bad idea to do that. But let's further engage, and then I'm sure that whatever concerns they have, the government of Ghana will resolve it.
Richmond Roxon, thank you very much. He's the spokesperson and head of communication at the Energy Ministry. And earlier we also heard from Timothy Nyame, who is the General Secretary of the Public Utilities Workers Union. In other stories this evening, lawyers for embattled former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta are tonight accusing government of interfering in his battle to free himself from U.S. detention. Well, Mr. Ofori-Atta will be spending his 8th day behind bars in the U.S. immigration detention facility. Well, his lawyers say the government of Ghana is selectively and aggressively pushing for his return to Ghana, seeking to exploit his current predicament. They also question why convicted former Maslock CEO Sedinam Tamaklo remains abroad. Ambassador to the United States Victor Smith hours ago disclosed to Joy News that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement to the United States, otherwise known as ICE, has examined and confirmed that Mr. Ofori-Atta was medically fit to be held in the detention center. His legal team had argued months ago that he was unfit to travel to Ghana following his surgery.
Yes, the ICE people confirmed that he was all right. Initially, they had medical people to determine whether he was fit to be held in a detention center, and they were convinced and were sure that he was okay. He was on medication, but he wasn't seeing any doctor at the time, and he had his medication, so he could be put in the detention center.
So in other words, since he was arrested, the ICE itself had examined him to determine whether he was medically fit to be in detention?
Well, they had caused for him to be, assessed by the medical personnel, not themselves. Because I've been to one of those detention centers before. They have very, very fully manned medical center for the detainees.
And Ambassador Smith further revealed that the FBI has been involved in the arrest, and that signals that the case is beyond immigration issues.
I suspect so. The ICE did the arrest, but a few hours ago, I was also informed the FBI were involved. And of course, that sort of corroborated with what the Attorney General told me, that the FBI had informed him that they had picked him up.
Okay.
So I suspect.
Yeah, you suspect. You suspect that.
I suspect it's a combination of these two factors. ICE normally will pick you for immigration issues.
Okay.
But then, of course, when the FBI comes in, then there must be some criminality or Interpol police request. So the red alert comes in there. So the combination of the two of them, convinces me that Ghana government had requested for this man to be brought in to help us, if you like, unravel some issues that have been brought against him as a former minister.
Victor Smith is Ghana's ambassador to the United States, and US-based immigration lawyer Jonelle Oklu explains why FBI involvement significantly changes the dynamics of this case.
To me, it's an indication that this isn't simply about a visa overstay.
Okay.
Right? If it was just a visa overstay, this visa revocation overstay, I dealt with a number of cases with, say, international students, maybe who they had their student visa revoked, that sort of thing. But no, I feel that the fact that the FBI was involved is an indication of what was said previously, that this had to do with the extradition request.
Okay.
And that is why the FBI is involved.
Meanwhile, joint users learning that the living conditions of Ofori-Atta is not the most ideal, and Jonelle Oklu says the holding center is currently overcrowded with more people in every room.
I would say currently the detention center is not any place that anyone would want to be. Under normal conditions, and especially now with the ramp up in deportations here from the United States, really the detention centers, they are overcrowded. It's said, 2 people in a room. Quite honestly, it could end up more than, 2 detainees in a room. Now, to say this, as His Excellency, the Ambassador, has stated, it seems that ICE is aware that Mr. Ofori-Atta is, a special case, right? And so it's quite possible that, he may be given special treatment that your ordinary detainee is not afforded. So it's quite possible that if they're aware, that he's a special case, that he could get better accommodations than what is normal, which right now are, overcrowded conditions.
That's a US-based Ghanaian immigration lawyer, Jonelle Oklu, there. Meanwhile, we've been hearing from a lawyer from former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta's camp, Frank Davis, who has described the persistent pursuit of his client as, quote, double standards, hypocrisy, and intellectual dishonesty. He explained why.
Let it be told to the ambassador that at no particular point in time have we said that Ken Ofori-Atta was picked up by ICE from a medical facility or on a hospital bed. So this business of his medically fit is neither here nor there. It's really unnecessary at this point to be bandying these words about. He has gone for surgery, which we all know. All we are saying is that he is recuperating and that he's in consultation with his medical team. And they will have to give him the all clear to come. I'm wondering why it is becoming increasingly difficult for us to understand the simple fact of life. Whoever said that Ken Ofori-Atta was on ICU help before he was picked up by ICE? He was picked up in his home or wherever they picked him up. I mean, so what is new?
But
that he's medically fit. Well, don't you know that he's medically fit?
Well, so the assertion previously held is that he cannot come until, you just said, his doctors gave him the all clear. ICE is also saying that he's medically fit for detention. In this situation, he can equally come back home, can't he? Can he not?
Well, that is your logic. It is not mine. Your logic is totally different from mine. if ICE are saying that he's medically fit for detention, that is different from traveling to Ghana to come and answer to charges here. It's different. And I'll reiterate, no one has said that Ken is not fit. All we are saying is that he is going through a recuperative process, and his doctors are advising him. It's as simple as that.
So that is Frank Davis there in a conversation with my colleague Mami Esi Nyameche Thompson. And let's bring you back into the studio and speak to Caleb Ziblim for a better understanding on this. He's part of the Joy News Research Desk. Caleb, so we know that Ofori-Atta is fighting to remain in the U.S. on two different fronts. Let's start with the fight against extradition.
Yes, Ken. So if you remember, somewhere last year, the USP declared Ofori-Atta wanted and placed him on the Interpol Red Notice list. And since then, the OSP had worked with the AG and they compiled the dockets that the AG then submitted to the US for extradition of Ofori-Atta back to Ghana to face the charges of the OSP. About 28 charges the OSP has filed against Ofori-Atta. So that's the first front. According to the AG and then Ghana's ambassador to the United States, Ambassador Victor Smith, the extradition process is ongoing. So Ofori-Atta is actively fighting the extradition process. Now the second leg of this is his visa status. So according to the AG, somewhere in July of 2025, that's somewhere last year, Ofori-Atta's visa was revoked. And then the US gave him until November last year to leave the US. And then he did not leave, which is why, according to the AG, ICE has now detained Ofori-Atta and they are processing to deport him.
Right.
He will also be going to court very soon to defend his case, and then depending on the outcome, Ofori-Atta might stay in the US or be deported back to Ghana, or he might be extradited, back to Ghana, depending on how things go.
Speaking of extradition, though, the US, as we all know, is unforgiving of those in its detention centers. What are Ken Ofori-Atta's chances?
So we've been looking at the ICE data, and they publish the number of arrests and deportations they do on their website regularly. So in every 2 weeks, actually. So on their websites, we track the data from January 28, 2025 to the 8th of January 2026. So that's almost a year period, and Donald Trump came into office after January 20th. So we have almost a year of Donald Trump in office. And if you look at the data, it shows that total arrests so far have been 352,590 arrests. And then total deportations in the same period has been 352,380. So if you take out the total deportations from the total arrests, we have just 210 individuals. So looking at the data, ICE deports almost 99.94% of those that they arrest. So the chances of Ofori-Atta, escaping this is very slim. But then again, if you look at the team, the lawyers around Ofori-Atta, former U.S. Attorney General and other big lawyers in the U.S. and also in Ghana here, people say that he might just be part of that 0.06% that do not get deported.
Caleb Ziblim, thank you very much. Michael Boadi is a fundraising manager with Transparency International Ghana. He's joining me on the telephones right now for more conversation on this. Michael, Frank Davis points out to the fact that Sedinam Tamaklo, who has been convicted, the former Maslock CEO, is still at large, and then the government of Ghana is urgently pursuing Ken Ofori-Atta. He points to some sort of hypocrisy there. Don't you agree with him?
Well, good evening, and good evening to your listeners and viewers. I want to say that the one thing that is happening, which has not helped the fight against corruption and the fight against crime generally in this country, is the comparison that we make and also the partisan posturing we take to fighting crime. I wouldn't give any value to that comparison. The case or the issues that the Honorable former Finance Minister is being called to come and answer are not the same as the case with Sedidam. If we want to call for fairness and we want to call for justice, let's do that separately. Let's not make comparison because it's not helping us. I think it is about time that Ghanaians collectively we take a position that corruption Inflation is hurting the country. Crime is hurting the country. We are fighting crime irrespective of which tribe you come from, which party you support, which religion you support, your complexion, your height, whatever. It is a crime. Let's deal with it. If Mr. Ken Ofori-Atta is being sought after to come and answer questions, let him come. Let us explore all the available legal options to get him to come and answer. If we have to get Ferdinand to come, let's do that. But let us not compare the two. I think that is wrong. I also, let me say this, I think it's so unfortunate that someone's health issue is being discussed in public the way we are carrying on. I think it's so unfortunate. What has the charges preferred against him? What has it got to do with his health? Let's leave it. The lawyers of the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta using his health issues and discussing it. And the state must also stop discussing his health issues. It is the person, Mr. Ofori-Atta, that we need to come and answer questions. Let's pursue him and do it in all fairness and all transparency, legally, and get him to come and answer the questions. We must collectively, as a people, to fight corruption and fight crime earnestly, irrespective of who and who is involved.
Michael Bwedi, thank you very much. He's the fundraising manager with Transparency International Ghana. That brings us to business, and George Riafe is here with the latest. George, what do you have for us?
Hi, Kenneth, and coming up in business, commercial banks challenge claims of not responding adequately to recent policy rate cuts and inflation decline. And Jubilee Field ends 2025 with an average daily production of 59,000, but operators are upbeat about significant improvement from this year as new oil wells come on stream. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one stop shop for all your office essentials, Centers Tanks and Pepsodent, Herbal and Charcoal. Welcome back to business on Newsnight. Now, commercial banks are challenging claims of not responding adequately to the recent policy rate cuts and inflation decline. Interest rates are currently averaging around 21% compared to inflation rate of 5.4% and policy rate of 18%. However, some have questioned the response of the commercial banks. The chief executive of the Ghana Association of Banks, John Iwa, disagrees.
But to place this in perspective and to let particularly your listeners understand how deep the Ghana reference rate has dropped between January 2025 and December 2025, let's consider the movement in the other rates. The policy rate declined from 27% in January 2025 to 18% in December 2025. That is 900 basis points reduction. The treasury bill rate declined from 28% in 2025 January to 11.09% in December 2025. That is about 1,694 basis points movement. The interbank rate, on the other hand, declined from 27.08% in January 2025 to 15.66% in December 2025. That is about 1,142 basis points. On the other hand, the Ghana reference rate declined from 29.72% in January 2025 to 15.68% in December 2025, at the last count, which is the last one that was released. That is 1,404 basis points decline. So as you can see, with the exception of the rate on Treasury bill benchmark, the Ghana reference rate is a rate that dropped steeper than all the other market rates. So I would advise that we always refer to the data, because the data will not tell you a lie.
John Iwa is Chief Executive of the Ghana Association of Banks. Now, enterprises are expecting the continuous decline in inflation rate to impact on the cost of doing business and credit in the country. Inflation rate has dropped consistently over the past 12 months to hit 5.4% in December last year. There are even projections of it declining further to reach 4% in April this year. Mark Bedu-Abuaje is Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
So with the reduction recorded at the end of the year of 5.4%, I expect that in the next sitting of the Monetary Policy Committee, they should consider that and look at also how exchange rate has been stable and reduce the policy rate. That is the only way we can get the Ghana reference rate to come down, and also lending rate, which is at the moment hovering around 25%, to also come down. This will bring some relief to businesses, and once businesses can borrow and invest, they can also expand and employ more people, and our economy will grow.
Mark Bedu-Abuaje is Chief Executive of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Now, the Jubilee field ended 2025 with an average daily production of around 59,000 barrels. Now, this update was captured in the Cosmos Energy's operational update for last year. Here's more in this report.
To some observers, an average daily production of about 60,000 barrels from the Jubilee field after 11 years of production may not be good enough. However, players on the field are upbeat about production picking up strongly in the coming month. This is due to the fact that some new oil wells have come on board. Initial estimates project that daily production could reach 70,000 barrels well before the end of the year. The partners on the Jubilee field are also putting in place other measures that will help production improve significantly by the end of the year. Key among them is the Plan of Development Agreement, which is currently awaiting Parliament approval. Some of these partners believe it could also help in attracting fresh and significant investment into Ghana's oil sector.
And that is a Business Desk report. Now, economist Professor Patrick Esumi has maintained that the IMF's classification of Ghana as high risk of debt distress should be seen as a precautionary measure. The IMF in a staff report revealed that Ghana is still classified as high risk of debt distress despite the significant progress that it has made in restructuring its debt. Professor Esumi tells Joy Business that the IMF is just being cautious about these projections and assessments.
And the domestic debt, we have done the debt restructuring, but it is not fully completed yet. And I think part of the concerns about the IMF is that we haven't really finalized the processes to see the full benefit of the restructuring. So there's one part of that. The other part is that even though in recent times we've seen our debt to GDP ratio come down substantially, a big chunk of that is that the fact that the gold prices are record high and we've accumulated reserves, the central bank has intervened in the forex market to strengthen the cedi. And because of that, the external component of our debt in cedi terms look lower. If the cedi worsens, if the cedi depreciates, we will easily go back to where we were. And I think that is where perhaps the fund is not convinced that the currency appreciation that has helped reduce the debt burden, so to speak, are probably not well grounded.
And that is economist Professor Patrick Esumi. To the stock market, if you are a shareholder of GCB, each value of the share that you are holding is up by peso to close at 20 Ghana cedis, 16 pesos. That of also Republic Bank was up by 2 pesos to close at 1 Ghana cedi, 32 pesos. And that's all for business on Newsnight.
Well, thank you very much, George. Sports is next, and Benaya is here with the latest.
And in sports, Ghana has moved to promote clean and fair sports with the inauguration of a 13-member governing board of the Ghana Anti-Doping Agency. The move strengthens Ghana's anti-doping framework and ensures that Ghanaian athletes continue to compete with integrity. The board, which is chaired by Professor Alex Dodu, also featured former Black Stars captain Stephen Appiah. Here's Sports Minister Kofi Adam speaking at the inauguration ceremony earlier today.
Today marks a defining moment in Ghana's sporting history. We are completing a national journey from intention to institution, from advocacy to law, and from law to action. With the passage of the Anti-Doping Act, the establishment of the National Anti-Doping Agency, and now the swearing in of its first board, Ghana has taken a firm and irreversible step forward. For decades, our athletes have carried our flag with dignity. Yet, our sport, which has globalized, its challenges have become more complex.
That's the Sports Minister Kofi-Atta speaking there. And that's it for sports. Over to you, Ken.
Thank you very much, Benaya. I was thinking there was another sacking of a big manager today.
Oh, no.
Okay, but I believe it's in the offing. Thank you.
And which manager are you looking forward to?
Somewhere in England. The team's name starts with an L.
Liverpool.
I don't know. Thank you, Benaya. And let's bring you other stories tonight, because the Auditor General's discovery of $500,000 in questionable payments in Keta port scandal has triggered calls for the prosecution of the former director of the port. Well, the amount was paid to the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority as rent under strange circumstances in 2024. The embattled former Keta boss is also the former acting chief executive officer of the Tema shipyard. A parliamentary affairs correspondent, James Avaji, was at that particular proceedings and joins us on the telephone lines with more. James, what are the circumstances surrounding this payment, of which the PAC members are calling for investigations?
Well, Ken, so the revelation that came at this meeting is that the total amount owed the Ghana Port and Harbours Authority was actually $6.6 million, which is rent accumulation from 1997 to 2024. And the members raised eyebrow over how this particular CEO was seconded to manage the shipyard by the Ghana Port and Harbours Authority under these strange circumstances without any document. According to the Auditor General, there is no official document of any tenancy agreement between these two entities, and how he decided to go ahead to pay this money to his parent company. Adam Agbana, who is a member of the committee, said this must be investigated and some punishment must be meted out.
I think that these are serious issues, because if a staff on secondment from GPHA is the one making the payments back to GPHA, there are also issues of conflict of interest. The same person was acting as chief executive officer for the non-existent Keta port, and it is very serious issues that I think we need to get the issues and get him to answer. But chief executive, did he leave a handing over note? And is there any explanation on this particular expenditure of $500,000 in your handing over notes? On what documentation was the payment made? Is it that anybody at all can write to you and tell you that you owe me this amount and you start making payment without any? Because if you tell us you don't have documentation to prove the review of the rent agreement that you have, and yet $500,000 was paid in 2024, I think beyond settling this issue between the two institutions, we need to understand what prompted that payment, who made the payment, what documents informed the payment, and if possible, if there is any wrongdoing on the part of any individual, the person needs to be punished for it.
Right, and let's bring you more stories this evening, because tension is mounting in the tuna enclave of the Sola Tuna Kalba district following a standoff between the family of the late NDC MP for the area, Joseph Bayel, and traditional authorities over the continued detention of his body at the Sola Hospital mortuary. Well, the chiefs are demanding over 900,000 Ghana cedis as compensation, said to cover legal costs from a long-standing land dispute involving the late MP. His son, Richard Bayel, tells my colleague Isaac Nyona that the chief's action is disgraceful. Let's go into the telephone lines right now and speak to the Savannah Regional Police, the Savannah Regional Minister, Salisu B. Awurebi, for more on this. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Has this matter come to your attention? And if it has, how are you handling it?
Yes, thank you to the listeners. This matter came to my attention last week, and the crux of it was that I asked a member of the Regional Peace Council to engage the family and the chief. And Richard was the person that I called, and he and Tandawara, a revered chief from the Waspe traditional area, all arranged, and Sunday, just this Sunday, they met at the Tunawers Palace. The issues as to the long-standing land dispute to which the late Honorable MP and the chiefs had an issue which is pending at the High Court was discussed, and the need for them to withdraw the case because the late chief is the one who sent the Tunawa, and by extension the Bolawa, who is the landowner of the lands in that sector, to court, for them to withdraw it and for us to play that amicable role of resolving the issue. That was what came up. Conscious of the fact that less than a quarter of an acre of land brought about the Kunijiri conflict. And we are mindful of this 1 acre land issue which has been pending in court, and once indeed the situation to resolve. But to be very frank with you, the chiefs made an initial demand. They were more than willing to back down on intervention by others.
Okay.
The family also took a stand that they will not go to the chiefs, and which the chiefs look at it as being disrespectful and not ordering well for the situation. We work on them on 2 different occasions. They agreed and turned the agreement down. Just yesterday, I caused the district to meet. The district went to the Tunawa, they went to the community and the family. They had an extensive discussion with them. And today, they all agreed that they will come to the Tunawa's Palace. From there, they moved to the Barawa's Palace. And when they came to the Tunawa's Palace, and they moved to the Barawa's Palace, the Barawa, who is the paramount chief of the Barawa traditional area, who is actually the landowner for and on behalf of the Yegbonwa for all lands in that area, agreed that these are the issues. They should go withdraw the case, or they should sign an agreement, or they should agree that they will get the case withdrawn for an amicable settlement of the land issue.
Right, Minister, thank you very much. That's the Savannah Regional Minister. And the New Patriotic Party and the National Democratic Congress are tonight bracing themselves for verdict with huge consequences as the Supreme Court set a January 28th date to deliver judgment in the Kpandai election irregularity case. Both sides say they're confident of victory. The NPP's 2024 parliamentary candidate for Kpandai, Matthew Nyindam, filed the application contesting the decision of the Tamale High Court, which announced the 2024 parliamentary election results in the constituency and ordered a rerun. After hearing arguments from all parties in court today, the 5-member panel led by Justice Gabriel Puaman adjourned the case and fixed January 28th for the ruling. Fatal Bayaga was there and reports.
A 5-member Supreme Court panel led by Justice Gabriel Puaman had arguments on the application seeking to quash the November 24, 2025 judgment of the Tamale High Court in the Kpandai parliamentary election dispute. Counsel for the applicant, Gary Nemako Mafo, argued that the High Court erred in assuming jurisdiction over the election petition, insisting it was filed outside the constitutionally required 21-day period after the Electoral Commission gazetted the results on December 24, 2024, he maintained that the court acted beyond a statutory mandate under Article 99 of the Constitution. Opposing the application and her arguments in court, lead counsel for Ensala Wakpal, Zika Abla Ado, contended that the results were regazetted on January 6, 2025, making the January 25 petition valid and within time. Lawyer for the Electoral Commission, Justin Amanivo, confirmed that multiple gazette notices were issued explaining the reflected different batches of.
That's my colleague Fatal Bayaga with events that happened in court concerning the Kpandai election rerun. And before we go, though, here a view of your messages you've been sending to our WhatsApp platform. This is Francis from Accra. He said, how did transgender status find its way in our JHS and SHS teacher manual in 2019? Who are the people at GES supporting this in Ghana for our children? And Daniel from Nalerugu in the Upper East region says, as a Ghanaian, I'm very angry about the behavior of the former Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta. If he knows that he has done nothing wrong, he should simply come home and clear his name. We've got more of your messages, but that's all time will allow for tonight. It's now time for Gig Squad right after the news. And Adobia is here with the latest. Adobia, I'm seeing you for the first time this new year, so Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
Right, what are we discussing this new year?
When is a new year? A lot of people said new goals and resolutions. So
Right.
for us on Geek Squad, we'll be talking about how people can basically set some good digitally smart goals for this year. What kind of tech habits can they build? And I'm sure that is really going to be beneficial to our listeners. So they should definitely stay tuned.
Exactly. Don't go anywhere.